Hi, and welcome to This Tantric Life. I'm your host, Layla Martin. We are here for such a special episode today. I'm here with my bestie, Emily Fletcher, spiritual teacher of Ziva meditation extraordinaire, all around badass mama, one of the most incredible spiritual teachers of our time, the best meditation teacher I have ever come across, my best friend, my lover, my muse, and we are here at the Gatsby Hotel in Athens. I'll tell you what we don't have a lot of. We don't have a lot of sleep in us. We've legit been traveling around Greece for like 10 days now. We've taken psychedelics not every day, but like a lot of days in some like really hot environments. It's blazing hot outside. So we don't have a lot of sleep. We don't have a lot of like, let's say, deep nourishing rest right now. I don't have a lot of peace in my skin because I got eaten alive by Cretan mosquitoes. Like for 2 nights in a row, I couldn't sleep because the mosquitoes were eating me all night long. So it's been a lot. We took LSD yesterday in a primordial cave that we descended into the literal bowels of and had a 12-hour journey, including going into the Mediterranean Sea at sunset, a wild and very intense taxi driver, and then we had to get up early in the morning, fly here to Athens where it's literally probably 100 degrees outside, and we are here in our bathrobes. We're also drinking Sex Magic, which is obviously product placement. So Sex Magic, amazing from Mood, and legit because we were actually tired. And I was like, you know what I do when I'm a little hungover and tired? I actually drink Sex Magic. So I drink it to have better sex. I also drink it to give me a pick-me-up that's not going to keep me awake when I'm tired like this. So like, and I've got Emily to always fix me. She's a legit Broadway star. So as her bestie, I'm always like studying how fabulous she is. Like she's so, it seems effortless, but you know work goes into that fabulousness. So she's always like fixing my hair, telling me not to bat my microphone when I'm doing the podcast. I'm also wearing slippers because my feet get cold. She was literally like, yo, girl, do you want those slippers on for the podcast? I was like, you know I do.
It is better than mismatched athletic socks, which is your norm.
Yep, totally. It's true because my feet get so cold. So I'm wearing toeless spa slippers.
I mean, it completes the look, really.
So let me tell you what you're going to get out of this episode today. All right. Episode 4. We went into a primordial cave of ancient fertility worship rituals going back to the Neolithic era. I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes, but if you want details on Crete, on matriarchal societies, on what we found at Knossos Palace, and the start of our cave adventure, then check out episode 3, which is on Emily's podcast, Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? In this episode 4, we're going to skip through most of that. I'll give you a little bit of the Cliff's Notes, and we're going to go straight to our epic High Priestess lovemaking experience in the depth of this cave where people have been worshiping the goddess for 15,000 years, maybe even longer. And we're going to take you step by step how you can use tools and practices that we have used in our life to get to this level of lovemaking, of freedom, of ecstasy, of energy. And we're really going to endeavor to weave into this episode not only our story of magic and eros and friendship and love and pleasure and orgasm, but how you practically can continue to build in your own life, in your own body, the ability to make love like this and be in the world like this, which is what I want for you. It's literally why I do this work. So, Emily.
What an intro. Cheers.
All right, we went to Crete because Crete is the home of one of the oldest, most established matriarchal societies in Europe. High Priestess goddess worship, where like they're like topless holding snakes, right? These were high priestesses who knew Kundalini magic, serpentine, bioenergetic activation practices to unify with the divine. And we're going to talk to you about how you can safely work with this kind of energy in your own body, how sex is a natural activator of this. We're going to talk to you about that in this episode. So we're here in this sacred island. Yep, Emily, just keep fixing me up.
Gorge.
Yeah. We're here on this island with this High Priestess transmission, and in our journey, we were going backwards in time, which we didn't necessarily intend, but that's what happened. So we go from Eleusis, which was this deeply established temple of like just majestic proportions, to Delphi, which is even older with the oracular practices and transmissions, to Pan's Cave, which is even older, to Knossos, which is one of the most ancient palaces in Europe, and then into this primordial cave where it all began. So me and Emily take LSD, the ritual sacrament of High Priestess worship in ancient Europe. And they know this because you can actually make LSD from ergot off of wheat or barley in special preparations that High Priestesses knew how to make. Pharmakon, I believe, is the word in Greece for these mystical potions of transformation. And LSD was most likely one of them. The research from Brian Murarescu's book, The Immortality Key, we'll talk to you all about that if you want to learn more. And so we really wanted to take LSD as this alignment with the ancient sacrament of the High Priestesses in Europe. And so take LSD we did. And if you want to learn how to safely take psychedelics, the 101 around psychedelics, please watch episode 3 on Emily's podcast. Why isn't everyone doing this? And in this episode, we're going to touch on the LSD, but we're going to dive mostly into the sacred sexuality. So Emily, can you give us just a brief overview of the cave journey into the lovemaking and maybe describe what that was like for you? What were you experiencing? Take us into the moment.
Yeah. So we started with a ritual intention setting, unioning with the medicine, and then descending down into the cave. And y'all might not know this about Layla, but she is in fact part goat. The way she traverses these rocks, they're so slippery. It's dark. It's like a deep kind of scary cave. It would be scary sober, to be honest. But like if you're starting to come up on psychedelics, it was pretty intense. Also, she's off into the wilderness and there's like 20 Italian tourists that are around me. I'm like, maybe I've lost Layla forever. Oh no, am I going to be stuck with these people? There's walkie-talkies, they're taking pictures. So I got the sort of riled up in the beginning. And then finally I found you. And then I sat down and I started immediately crying because usually, you know, before any good ecstatic trip, there's usually a purge or two in there. It's like the body just needs to shake off to make some space for that wild cosmic energy to come through. And then I said to you, I'd love to feel like we've arrived. Like I want to feel like we're in our home, that we're in our location. And really, I think what I was wanting was safety.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, honestly, why rituals have been happening here for so many tens of thousands of years, is the safety that's there instead of the woods. Safety from the elements, safety from other tribes, safety from animals. And yet, when there were tourists coming in, like every 40 minutes to an hour, my nervous system was a little on guard, a little heightened. And the LSD, you know, heightens things.
Yeah.
It's a little
and
chilly.
I want to pause really quick and say, like, part of our journey has been coming face to face with a bit of the heartbreak that the world isn't built for High Priestesses anymore. Yeah. You know, that these sacred caves of ritual magic aren't honored in a way that you can go and do ritual undisturbed, you know, without tourists kind of stumbling in and taking photos, that you can't be at Eleusis in prayer without triggering the security guard.
Or having whistles blown at you.
Yeah.
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the number one way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path.
And as we were descending into the cave, before we even entered, we both stopped. You're like, wow, they really built a Christian church right on top of this sacred, ancient goddess worship site. And it's not like, oh, this town needs a church here. It was like, no, it was clearly a claiming. It's like, let's stick our cross in it. Let's stick our flag in it. And so I thought that was of note.
I felt that so deep because this primordial cave, women went there to birth, to pray to the goddess of fertility for 15,000 plus years. This was a cave of the goddess. And so what I really saw with this Christian church, right, planted right on top, is it's not that there's anything wrong with Christ consciousness. In fact, Christ consciousness can be so beautiful. It's not that Christianity hasn't done beautiful things in people's hearts. It's that when the Catholic Church and when Christianity decided to overtake other religions, to say you are no longer allowed to pursue God in the way that is true to you, that's when it became toxic. And I felt that toxic mission, that toxic intention to take away a woman's right to pray to God through the power of orgasm, to pray to God in her birthing ceremony, in the depths of connection to nature, on whatever plant medicine she chose, and to claim that so much like we are the ones who get to tell you what to do with your bodies, with your God, with your sexuality, with your pussy. And it was like, I really felt that.
Yeah, and thank you for naming that, because it's not just in this one location. It's been a very structured, thought through campaign to go to every continent, every country, and like you said, go yes to other religions, but also indigenous cultures, and take away the medicines that people have been using for thousands and thousands of years to have the visceral experience of God, not just to talk about God. And so that was an interesting way to start. And then, as we descended down, one of our prayers was for privacy. And, you never get the trip you want, you get the trip you need. Just like, and so then part of, being sort of advanced practitioners is that you roll with what is becomes the portal. So yes, I was really sick. I was on the second day of my period. It was cold. It was chilly. It was a sort of intense beginning to the journey. And then we found our spot. We found our home.
Yeah.
And there was this little tiny mini cave inside of the cave with almost felt like a little front porch. Yeah. And we put down our yoga mat and we dropped in and started doing breath work. And I remember at one point we found this little rock that felt like we were being cradled.
Yeah.
And we were just cuddling while this rock was cradling us, and we were laughing so hard.
So hard.
Because I love the line of why is God laughing? Because she's in on the joke, right? It's there really is a cosmic playfulness to all of this.
Yeah.
And I think at some point you were like, oh, should we do sex magic? And we were laughing so hard. And I said, we didn't come here to just lay around and have a good time. Let's get up and do something.
Yeah, we got to do some shit. And it was so hilarious because we were lounging, just having a great time in this fertility cave. And it was time to get up and do sex magic.
So,
although it's hilarious that you keep calling me part goat, because as a maenad, Pan is a goat.
Yes.
And so part of being a maenad is to unify with the divine essence of a goat god. And also people always look at me I love makeup, I love fashion, I love good lighting. But people are always what? You can fucking book it into a dark ass cave at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I'm I lived in Asia for 10 years. People don't see how in nature I have been and how much I have lived in this like very raw, barefooted way for a lot of my life as well.
It is really of note. Like, it is remarkable, your ability to navigate, and remarkable to note my inability to navigate. Like, at one point you said, I don't really understand your relationship to walking.
Well, you asked me, you were like, is this easier without shoes? Because I think I had taken my shoes off and I was now scrambling barefoot. And I was like, I don't understand your relationship to walking, so I have a hard time answering that question.
Because I was basically walking on all fours and butt sliding down the slippery ground. Oh, boy.
We should also mention that one thing you don't have is perfect health.
Yes, so I have been very sick. You can hear my sort of queasy day 100, it feels like, of this bronchial thing.
Yeah.
And I was on day 2 of my period. You know, so my back was hurting. Like, I was not Emily Fletcher at her finest. I was not giving you...
I would argue. One of the things we were joking about in the cave was it would be like silent. And then Emily would just start coughing so hard, like a huge coughing fit. Like, it really sounded like she was gonna vomit her lungs out of her body. And you could hear tourists coming, right? We were so deep in the cave that the tourists weren't really gonna run into us for the most part, but you could hear Emily just like coughing so intensely. And I was like, it's good to remind people of their own mortality. And Emily goes, you want a little death in your timeless cave experience. It doesn't just go on forever, or does it?
Oh my gosh. Also, I thought that, you know, if our safety and lives depended on privacy and secrecy, I would be the first one kicked out of the cave. It was very loud. It was very loud, my coughing. So after a while, like, I don't know, we were maybe 2-3 hours in, and I felt so much energy building in our body. And for me, this particular experience, oftentimes LSD can be more visual, and certainly, like, looking at the caves, you could see them moving and changing shape, and almost like there were spirits coming out of the cave. But it wasn't like I closed my eyes and I was seeing the fractal language of God. It wasn't like I was seeing mandalas or that sacred geometry that we so associate with psychedelic experiences. This one certainly was much more in the body, much more visceral. And then as we were feeling the energy build, at some point you were going to crawl into the tiny cave within the cave, and then you just straddled this wall and you were leaning up against it, and it looked so beautiful. It looked so hot. And it also looked quite pleasurable. Like, it looked like you were being like held from the front by the cave and like straddling it and sort of fucking the earth. And I asked her, I was like, does that feel good? Because it looks amazing.
And I was honestly on the edge. You know, we talk a lot in episode 3 of, you know, this was an advanced practice of psychedelic use after 20 years of spiritual practice, 20 years since I did my first LSD journey, you know?
About that for me too.
To be that deep in nature. And the cave wasn't truly dangerous. Like, it was, you know, there was some sliding.
You might have gotten a bruised knee or a busted hip or something if you slipped, but we weren't like...
We weren't risking our lives and falling or anything like that, but you still had to be careful because you could have fallen like 5 feet off the edge or something like that. And so, you know, we were in this advanced practice, and I really want people to return to nature, to feel safe in nature, to do Psychedelics 101, where you have an amazing guide, where you have integration, where you get to map psychedelic terrain, where you're very safe and very held. And you and I got to jump off into wild freedom because of the level and depth of our practices that we've done. And so we're going to share some of those practices with you today that you can do to bring this kind of wildness into your life. And we're down in the cave, and with the LSD, my sense of self was really dissolving. I was losing any sense of time and space, and part of it was LSD, and part of it was this primordial cave.
Yeah.
And I was really getting into my body of like the pleasure, the simple pleasure of being alive, the simple pleasure of birthing a baby in a cave, the simple pleasure of fucking before there was any idea of right or wrong or good or bad, just being, right? And the pleasure of that. So I was in that, and I was also in a little bit of like, oh God, like, my identity is melting open. And there was this like inside, the cave was so big, there was this dark cavern within the cave, and I was considering climbing into it. And the thought crossed my mind of cave spiders because I had encountered cobwebs in part of my goat crawl down into the cave at rapid speed. I will take us people to this moment just so you understand how raw this cave was, right? Like it's dark, there's light coming in from the hole, but we're literally hundreds of feet into the cave with these wild rock sculptures. It was unreal.
Which they even looked ancient. Like they felt like it's softened by time.
Ancient. And I crawl into this like dark cave within a cave. I'm straddling the rock. I'd had a thought of cave spiders and I was like, you know what? And I'm kind of like getting into my body and feeling the eros. I'm gyrating on the rock and this giant cave spider crawls right next to my face. Like I'm gyrating on a rock and the rock face is right here. And the spider is literally right here and it's like that big. And I was like, oh, fuck. And I didn't want to freak Emily out. You don't want to ruin someone's vibe when they're on LSD in the cave. She didn't need to know about the spider. So I just casually slipped out of the deeper cave within the cave and like rolled across the rock face. She was like, how you doing? And I was like, I'm fabulous. I was like, we'll talk about the spider tomorrow.
Yes, and thank you for that gift, because had I known there was a spider, I think my already very heightened nervous system might have kicked over the edge. I am good at self-soothing, but that might have really kicked me over.
Nobody needed to know about that spider.
One thing I think your audience might enjoy is that, since I was on the second day of my period and I had a cup in, it just felt right to just really I was like, maybe we should paint on these walls with my blood.
Yeah.
And so, I took out the cup and I started painting with it. And then I just poured it down the side of the wall. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Even with a little bit of light in there, you could see the red, streaming down the rock. And then you asked for third eye blessings. So I blessed you on your third eye and mine.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I've ever put that on my face. I know our friend Mia is a big fan of it. I know that, those stem cells, it was the original vampire facial. Mm-hmm. But it was my first time doing that, which felt like a cool initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reclamation of the holiness and beauty of menstrual blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here we go.
We're also, as we do this podcast, the light is just going to keep going down, and we were like, descent into darkness.
Yes.
We're not going to control this environment. We're just going to let the sun go down.
It's perfect. It's perfect. So I started to feel the energy building, both in the cave, between us, in my body. And I know that we had a loose intention of doing sex magic. We had brought our wands, you brought your egg, and eventually I just felt magnetized to you.
Yeah.
And so I just started moving closer and closer, and it just felt like our bodies just just plugged in to each other.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was this undulation, a real Kundalini, but between the two of us, as if the snakes were sort of dancing back and forth between our bodies.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by, I heard some quote yesterday that as you move, the universe moves, and as the universe moves, you move. They are one in the same. It is hand and glove.
Yeah.
And that's very much what it felt like. It felt like if I would even intend something, already the universe in the form of Layla Martin would move with me.
Yeah.
And same, you were so present with me, and I've never experienced anyone so simultaneously everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And deeply rooted and grounded in your body and so outrageously present. It was really wild, and a testament to your decades of practice and the level of mastery that you can be both God and human, the ocean and the wave, in that practice in real time. And it was so fun. This was also our second cave lovemaking experience of this trip. So it really started to feel like home. It really started to feel familiar. And then I think one of my favorite moments, honestly, was that we were just having so much fun and we were laughing so much that I said, this feels like equal parts hot and hilarious. And I am not going to pick a lane.
Yes.
Like, I am going to just ride both of these. I'm going to keep laughing hilariously and letting it be hot instead of being like, oh, it's time to be sexy now. Or like, oh, I have to like be a mood of what I think sexiness is. Because again, we're in this like raw, before right and wrong, before masculine and feminine. And that felt so fun to really dance that like 11 out of 11 hotness, 11 out of 10 hotness, and 11 out of 10 hilarity.
Yeah.
And then as things started to...
You also said you were like, I don't want to pick a lane.
Yeah, I'm not. No way.
We have to decide between hotness and hilariousness.
That's right. And so as things started to progress, it felt like at some point we had like plugged our yonis into each other and we were both leaned back. And it felt like... I mean, again, I'm on LSD, but I was like, we should give birth at the same time. And it felt like we were like almost birthing. I was like, what if this is just a silly LSD joke, not necessarily like a way to have amazing sex, but I think hilarity is a fun ingredient of that.
Absolutely.
But I was like, what if we gave birth at the same time and traded babies? And then, oftentimes in communities, like you wouldn't know who was the father before paternity tests. And so it allowed the men to really take ownership of all of the children in the tribe.
Yeah.
But like, this is the one time we wouldn't know whose baby was whose. Although it's less complicated math. Okay, back to the sex. One of the things also that felt of note was the simultaneity of the giving and receiving. Like it didn't feel like either one of us were falling into like the giver role or the receiving role or the masculine or the feminine. It felt like both of us were inhabiting both frequencies simultaneously, which felt like that did feel advanced to me. And I don't even like that word advanced because even that feels a bit patriarchal, but it felt complex.
True.
And it felt true.
Yeah.
It just felt like almost like a yin and a yang, where there was white inside black and black inside white, and penetration inside of receptivity and receptivity inside of penetration, mostly energetically. But I was struck by this like spinning wheel of simultaneity.
Yeah. And you really emphasized how it was so energetic. Like, I love how you've said, like, the energy is so powerful. We could explore the energy for lifetimes, and so erotic. Because I think sometimes people think that those, like, aren't necessarily opposites, but almost like you trade one for the other. You're either having this, like, very transcendent energy sex, or having this, like, very raw, erotic sex, and you can have both. Yeah. They can feed each other. And so I really felt that it's like we were like in the like throes of energy activation and energy orgasm, and we would like grind on each other's pussies, and the exquisiteness of the physicality of it was so incredible as well.
And actually, of note, that feels like an evolution in our relationship, because it feels like most times in our past, because we've been in play experiences together, we've definitely been in erotic experiences together before, but never like to this degree, never to this level of intensity. And I'm curious your experience, but in mine, it's felt very up, that we were so cosmic, that it was so energetic, and it was like all of the upper chakras were very aligned, and it was like lots of downloads happening. This time it felt like both and, like the halo was open and the roots were deep, and like that felt like that we truly both became channels and vessels, and then in the merging, the antenna became much more intense, the bandwidth became stronger. And still, I mean, we'll be discovering for, the rest of our lives likely, like everything that got downloaded in that cave. But it was like, thank you to this beautiful medicine, that was one of the few visuals that I had, was that it felt like a super highway of streaming consciousness down into both of our bodies. And simultaneously rooting deep into the earth.
This episode is sponsored by my program, Obliss. What that means is that I have the joy of sharing this podcast with you because some of you will go on to join my programs. So Obliss, I have been teaching for 10 years. What does it do for you? It gives you a space to activate your highest pleasure, to fall in love with your body as a temple and experience the energetic magic and eros that is in you. How do I know it's in you? Because it is in every single woman and people of all genders that I have worked with. When they do these practices, they activate something inside of themselves that they never thought possible. Obliss trains you to have the ultimate orgasm. It's like you get the ultimate orgasm, but the kind of side effect is how deeply you fall in love with yourself. So the results that people get from this program are absolutely life-changing. It trains you to heal your sexuality, to address old wounding, to be able to face things like fear, guilt, shame, and shutdown, be able to love and heal yourself back into your magnetic radiance so you can have the best sex, the most incredible relationships that you were born to have. So Obliss, you can actually sign up today. So you can head over to laylamartin.com/Obliss. That's laylamartin.com/Obliss. You can also find that link down below to find out all the details of the program and to hop into this incredible life-changing program that will give you a deep dive, but also a gentle introduction to the practices of Tantra and sacred sexuality that you can carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yes. And this is something that I realized about sex and eros about 10 years ago in tantric constellations. We weren't actually fucking each other, but I had a practice group where we would go into like energetic constellations of basically having energy sex with each other. And when everyone got super present and went there, it's like, you know how you can have a download on plant medicine or a download while you're meditating? It was like the universal portals unlocked and just like downloads like streamed down, blessings streamed down. And I was like, oh, this is what, like, yeah, orgiastic sex, group sex, but just truly ecstatic divine sex between two individuals opens that portal so powerfully.
Well, that exact thing is why I have the stadium kink. Like, so just to catch people up.
Yeah,
like,
let's talk about the stadium kink.
One of my first downloads, like, you taught me sex magic.
Yeah.
And it really obviously changed my life. I mean, just to give people a little context, you know, I've been teaching very much from the neck up. I've been, yes, a spiritual practitioner, yes, teaching meditation. And of course, meditation does help you to be more embodied because it is a stress relieving tool. And the less stress you have in your body, the more spaciousness you have for life force itself to embody your physicality. So yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And I was very much teaching from my mind, from my intellect, speaking about states of consciousness in a very honestly like patriarchal lineage. And so when I met you and started initiating into these practices with you, into more embodied practices, into more feminine, into more sacred sexuality, like one, the soil was very fertile when those seeds got planted, but two, it was like I was able to plug in all of the other energy centers in my body. And so my life, my career, my love, like everything has really taken off in this beautiful new direction. And one of the first things that happened after you taught me sex magic, I went to this beautiful event and this psychic woman's like, may I, permission to read? And she puts her hands on me and she said, oh, I see you in a stadium. And it's not just any stadium, it's 80,000 people. It's Dallas Cowboy Stadium. It's not just you. You're surrounded by women. You're in a circle. And then that's all she could really see. And then next week I like downloaded the entire run of show, and it's basically 80,000 people climaxing at the same time in this beautiful state of coherence with themselves and everyone holding a collective prayer for the species and the planet. And it's not about a FU to society. It's not about public masturbation. It's not about voyeurism. It's not about an 80,000 person orgy. It is about the collective antenna. It is about no one knows what downloads would come through. No one knows what blessings would come through. No one knows what prayers would be offered up if you could really get that many people in these heightened states at the same time.
Yeah. Well, me and Mama Gina kicked it off with 900, and you can just take us to 80,000, baby.
Yes. So good.
So now I'd love to walk you through what has contributed to us being able to make love in this way? Like, what unlocks the capacity to have this level of sex? And the first piece that we've already talked about is Kundalini energy. Because it is true that when you unlock Kundalini energy, sex becomes more energetic, more powerful, more potent, and more sensitive in a way. It really does take sex to a new level. Now, that's not why people awaken Kundalini energy, but it is one awesome side effect. Thank you, goddess. So Kundalini energy, if you don't know, and we talk about this in episode 3 a lot, so you can also check that out, episode 3 on Why Isn't Everyone Doing This, Emily Fletcher's podcast. Kundalini energy is embodied consciousness, and it is an energetic activation. So I know it through my tradition in which I awoken it, which was Tantra. And in that tradition, Kundalini, this life force energy, is worshipped as goddess consciousness. So it's actually embodied consciousness waking up. So if you think about when you meditate and you're activating consciousness, there's also a consciousness to the entire world, to our bodies. It's Shakti activation, Shakti awakening. Kunda, it's cognate with coiled because it starts coiled and wrapped around traditionally around the tailbone, the coccyx, and activates from there. In certain traditions and traditions that I teach from in a woman, it actually starts from the cervix and the cervical area. And as this energy awakens, what it's designed to do is to both offer deeper spiritual realization and experiences, but also it systematically prepares your nervous system and body to sustain deeper and deeper states of spiritual awareness. Because to sustain spiritual awareness is actually a high energy state. And so a lot of us are leaking energy through our blockages, through our childhood traumas and wounding, through past life issues, through chronic contraction and stress physiologically. So when Kundalini activates, it actually starts systematically removing those blockages out of your system. It literally clears the way for you to have more embodied states of spiritual awakening. Now, here's the thing. You can spiritually awaken to your true nature at any time. What's amazing about Kundalini is it allows you to sustain that spiritual awakening through the human experience. And it does that by literally preparing your body and nervous system to be able to live spiritual reality through the body. And so a lot of phenomenon of Kundalini awakening, the body shaking, the body unwinding, the body having energetic and healing releases is actually the wisdom of Kundalini working through us and unwinding the body so that we can relax deeper and deeper, have less of a psychic load from the past, and we can be literally more present in our somatic reality. This allows our embodied reality to match more of our spiritual consciousness. It's so powerful. It's so beautiful. It's so sacred. Now, what happens when Kundalini energy first starts to awaken is if we don't have a spiritual practice to allow it, right? This can be hatha yoga. It can be plant medicine practices. It can be breath work. It can be meditation. It can be qigong. We will actually, by habit, repress the energy because prior to the awakening, we actually have a psychological structure that bears down on our energy and literally locks it in place. So instead of a free flow of aliveness and spiritual flow, we're living in a state of contraction. And so what Kundalini energy will do is it will actually unwind that contraction in our bodies so that we can allow the free flow of energy. So me and Emily have both individually done spiritual practices for close to 20 years. So what that means is that we have prepared our bodies and our nervous systems to be able to sustain a high level of energy activation and flow. That's not something that happens overnight. So clearing the way with spiritual practices is super important, not only for a Kundalini activation, but to be able to allow energy to flow through your body during any practice, during any movement, but especially during sex. What would you say has deeply contributed to you being able to allow Kundalini energy and life force energy to flow through you at that level in sex?
I'd say it's maybe three main things. First and foremost, certainly my meditation practice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been every day for 16 years now. So twice a day for 16 years.
Yeah.
I meditate. And yes, I've missed here or there a month after my son was born. But like by and large, twice a day, no matter what, I practice dying. Right? Like that's really what it is. You're transcending the individuality and accessing totality. And in that dissolving, there is a softening. Right? And so when that, or the wave reminds itself that it is the ocean. And when you come back from the totality, back into the individuality, you're not exclusively the wave anymore. You can't pretend that you're just the body anymore. Your body remembers that you're actually the ocean. You remember that you're actually God. And so that has certainly cleared the way and made the soil fertile for these seeds of sacred sexuality to be planted. And thank you so much for initiating me in so many of these practices. The work that I've done with you, learning sex magic, now being in Vita coaching and de-armoring and doing trauma work and actively going after and being excited when I discover trauma because I'm like, oh good, I get to reclaim this for my own life force now instead of it sucking my own energy. And then I'd say the third ingredient is that I have been singing and dancing and acting since I was 8 years old. So, tap, jazz, ballet, voice lessons, and using my body as an instrument for music, for dance, for catharsis, for theater. And so there is a level of, now everyone's into somatic processing and therapy, but that was not always the way. But I have been dancing with my emotions since I was 8. I have been physically dancing since I was 8, using my voice. And these practices that you do, the same tools that you need to get relaxed and open enough to be a vessel, to be a good performer, are pretty much the exact same practices that you need to be open and available to be a vessel for sex.
I had a Tantra teacher who actually said the only place where Tantric wisdom was preserved in the European traditions was in theater.
Yeah. And it's wild and it's very communal and it's very tribal. Like, every caste that you're in becomes its own ecosystem. So you really have this intimate family. Every theater class that you're in, you're bearing your soul to people. And there's a level of vulnerability and intimacy there. I remember Regina, who's my roommate, she was like, how come your pussy's so activated? Like, she didn't understand why I was so open and why I've taken to all of this water. And I was like, well, I've been doing it actually, just in a different form since I was 8.
Yeah.
Just without necessarily pointing it directly at eroticism, but similar opening, similar moving of that energy, similar worshiping and holding the body's wisdom sacred.
Yeah, and as I say, Kundalini energy, it doesn't matter. People get really in their heads of is it Kundalini? Is it regular energy? What kind of energy? That's a topic for another podcast because it's deep and vast. But just allowing energy in your body, period, is a huge key to having more sacred sexual experiences. So having a practice, and it can be theater arts, it can be sacred sounding, whether mantras or vocal activation practices, will train your body to allow more and more energy to move through it. People are often afraid in Western traditions of energy activation and movement. And that is because we've been systematically taught to be afraid of energy. Part of that is because when energy activates, we remember that we're God. We remember our own divine nature through sex, through movement, through dance, through expression itself. And because There was such a concerted effort from especially the Catholic Church in Europe for people to not have access to practices that reminded them of their own divinity outside of the church's teachings. We got taught that when energy moves through your body, it's either scary or maybe it means there's something wrong with mental health.
Or you're possessed by the devil.
Exactly. And so we actually usually have these psychological locks in Western society, right? You don't have the same fear necessarily in India, a culture which still respects energy in a lot of ways. So if you have that fear, learning to normalize energy experiences is huge. Learning to normalize the shaking that happens as being sacred. Learning to normalize sounding and releasing as being sacred. And here's a huge thing for that kind of sex. Not needing to look pretty, not needing to look classically sexy. Like, I would say you were literally the hottest thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. And it's like you could be literally like snarling or in like profound states of energy activation, right? You're not performing. You're not trying to look hot. You're in the truth of the energy, which looks wild, which looks real. And that's so much hotter than performance.
So much. And there's a beautiful Glennon Doyle quote that she says, you know, my whole life I knew how to be wanted.
Yeah.
I did not know want.
Yeah.
I did not know my own want. And I very much was that. Like, I was world class at making people want me. And it is not until very recently that I have fully dropped into the depth of my own desire.
Yes. All right. So as you referenced, to be able to have sex like this, one of the key things is to learn to be with yourself, which means to feel your feelings in a safe and self-responsible way, right? So sometimes we think feel your feelings, okay, I'm gonna haul off and yell at my kids or my partner, or I'm gonna cry rivers of tears at work or whatever. But feeling your feelings means having a sacred space, whether that's with a therapist, with a coach, in a spiritual practice, 10 minutes of your Vita practice in the morning, having a ritual space where you can cry your tears, where you can breathe and rage if you need to, where you're not going to hurt or upset anyone else, but you can be with yourself. And learning to strip away so much judgment of parts of you being right or wrong inside. I want this part, but not that part. I love this part of me, but not that part of me. To safely awaken energy and to make love in the rawest, most primal way requires that we can be with ourselves, to not judge or shame the part of us that we think is wrong, but allow it and love it so deeply. So you got there through meditation, right? I teach it as a foundational practice in Vita. Can you love yourself? Can you love all parts of yourself? What does it look like to have daily rituals and practices where you meet yourself and you choose love, you choose integration, not disintegration anymore? That brings you into a level of power that you can be with this unfolding of yourself in a super potent way. So it's necessary, and it's why I teach the way that I teach. I focus less on energy activation and Kundalini awakening, which is actually the easy part, and more on people building a foundation of true psychological safety into their nervous systems so that you can be with yourself and choose love. That creates an inner ecosystem of safety, which creates a container for healthy energy awakening.
Yes. And I'm experiencing that right now, like inside of Vita, because I'm in the coaching training. And I remember there's an infant practice where you like go into the innocence of what it's like to be a baby and like discovering like, oh, what's a hand? And like, oh, knees. And like exploring your pleasure and sexuality from the innocence of being a baby. And I went into that and I was like, oh, sweet. I'll like do this as I drift off into sleep. And I literally was like, okay, what was it like? Because I was born premature and I was in an incubator, and I just sort of like zoomed into that consciousness. And the moment I dropped into that, I started screaming, crying. Like trauma I had no idea was there started like vomiting out of my body.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh. I literally, I wasn't even like I knew to repress it. I didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
And so how could I possibly be in my full aliveness and my full ecstatic potential if like the original imprint of being a human was terrifying, and being away from my mother and in a plastic box with scabs on my knees and elbows from scooting on the rough sheets. And, you know, so it's like, that might not sound sexy, and that might not sound fun, but if you don't get that stuff up and out, then you will not have the bandwidth for these like cosmic super highways of energy to run through you like we had in the cave.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, back in Pan's cave, but 5 days before Primordial cave.
Lest we forget the first cave.
The first cave, lovemaking. I kind of like the caves like cave fucking, cave lovemaking, cave cosmic eros. Like, oh, it's like just cave whatever with Emily. As you were touching my clitoris, right, and making love to me, at a certain point, right, and that was probably like an hour-long experience, I just started sobbing because I actually hit a layer where I was still removed from my physical pleasure. And it was still sadness from being sexually abused as a child. Now, if I didn't know to cry, to let myself cry, to love myself while I was crying, to stay resourced in my body and connected and present with myself, and also that I could trust that you could be with my crying, none of that could happen. What then would happen is I would just disconnect. I would go into my head, or I wouldn't feel anything, and maybe I'd feel like there was something wrong with me or there was something wrong with you. It would cut the energy.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening to so many of us when we have sex. We actually don't know how to sexually heal, how to allow the healing that wants to happen through sex, which is the act of life itself. Yeah. So of course it's going to heal us, to let that come through our bodies in a safe, loving, structured way where we're actually creating nervous system integration and healing rather than disconnect. And so the fact that you could touch me was such eros, such beauty. And I even said, like, keep touching me, this is beautiful. And I could sob, and I could feel your love, and I could feel the safety of us. It was so healing, and even more of my physical pleasure came online. It's so beautiful.
Thank you for naming that, because it was so masterful. It was so masterful to watch your bravery, your unapologetic feeling, the simultaneity of staying in the eros while simultaneously releasing such ancient sadness was beautiful to witness, truly an honor. And it reminds me of the simultaneity of something that I feel proud of us for, that I think also is quite relatable on the 3D to most people, is that, you know, in yesterday's cave, you very wisely were like, Emily, we're going to need more time. And I was like, but we're going to go to the beach. And we're like, so we called the taxi driver to come pick us up because, you know, don't drink and drive, don't do LSD and drive, kids. So we had a driver coming to the cave to pick us up, and all of it, and we were like deep in it. Like, we are certainly not human anymore. We've dissolved into the collective consciousness of all that is. Like, we are wild.
Energy is literally pounding my third eye and crown so hard as our like pussies are like gyrating, and we're making love to each other and literally like holding each other in this like primordial cave, just like wave after tsunami of cosmic energy and like orgasm. And you can hear the taxi driver.
And he's like, hello?
Like 300 feet up being like, yeah.
Hello? It was a real like buzzkill, you know, we're like, oh no, and suddenly you go into time, you go into the 3D, you go into humanity, you go into what's next. Oh no, I have to be somewhere. And I just feel like that's such a relatable, like, I have a kid, I'm always on the clock, and it's, for me, one of my breaks is time.
Yeah.
Like, if I am like, oh no, we're rushed, or I have a limited amount of time, I still have my accelerator, I still will get turned on, but it's very hard, like, there's an immediate headwind.
Yeah.
And so when that got introduced into the equation, like, we could have panicked, we could have freaked out, we could have just been like, well, party's over, let's go. And we really like chose to honor the transmission of what was coming through, and chose to honor like why we came to this cave.
Yeah.
And there was no cell service, we couldn't text him.
You checked. I also ran the calculus. I was like, we have his number. I could send him money after, so we're not going to be the biggest assholes in the world.
Yeah, like, we can pay him more, we can text him later, we're not stranded.
But we don't have to prioritize his comfort.
Yes.
And everything being okay.
Or being a good girl.
Over the fucking magic that's happening. And at some point, right, we were trying to make this decision. I was like, this is what we came here for.
Yeah.
And there's like a bigger essence in that too.
Yeah. And the fact that we were able to, like, even with him, like, hello, and like him getting more and more panicked, like, if we died in this cave, you know.
You were the best quote ever though, because I was like, I think he's worried about us. He's looking for us. Our car is up there. I understand that he's concerned. And we were yelling back, hello, hello, we're fine. You know, we were communicating with him over, like, it was way too far to move. And you were like, perhaps the sounds of our orgasms will let him know that we are just fine. The audacity in that. It's so good.
I am nothing if not audacious.
You are so audacious.
But I just think that's a very, like, I don't even know if I have a tip for anyone or a tool other than, like, honoring what is.
Yeah.
And how do we reprioritize our pleasure over the laundry, over the nap time, over the kids' breakfast. I mean, maybe feed your kids. But, like, you know what I mean? I feel like so many people, especially moms, become martyrs to the clock.
Yeah.
And martyrs to everyone else's needs.
Yeah.
And our own pleasure gets really deprioritized.
Yeah.
And so the thing I'm highlighting that I'm proud of us for is that we prioritized the pleasure. And just to wrap up the story with the driver, is that we did end up texting him. He did come back. He drove us to dinner and back, and we tipped him very well. And he actually gave me a hug at the end of the night, and it felt like he felt honored.
Yeah.
And so that felt like you can do both. You can honor yourself, prioritize your pleasure, and not leave the rest of your life to crumble.
Yeah. And how cool if as a kid breakfast is 10 minutes late because mom's having a cosmic orgasm.
Yeah, and comes out radiant and happy and joyous.
Yes. Yes. The beauty of that. The beauty of that.
There's a part of me that, like, doesn't want to see my partner right now. Like, I don't even want to be touched. I want everyone to leave me alone. I want to get lost in some Instagram rabbit hole, looking at people that make me feel bad about myself and not come back until tomorrow. But what I really, really want, actually, is like a super sexy makeout, a luscious bubble bath, some sort of self-care. I want to do yoga. I want to have an amazing, yummy dinner. I want to feel connected to my body. I want to get a massage from him. That's what sensuality is for. It is for the person and woman who gives and gives and gives all day long, and you've just got nothing left to give in the evenings when you want to have time for yourself, when you want to connect, when you want to be intimate, when you want to do self-care. So sensuality is just packed with ingredients that both calm your system but keep you delightfully, erotically, and sensually activated. So it's not going to put you to sleep, but with things like L-theanine and lemon balm and magnesium, it helps calm you. And then it has these amazing ingredients like damiana, ashwagandha, katuaba, passion flower that actually give you that lift into a kind of dreamy, seductive, shimmery state. So I love taking sensuality before bubble baths. I love taking sensuality before getting a massage from my partner or a professional. I love taking sensuality when I want to relax into the evening, but I want to do something magical like a ritual by candlelight. I'm not ready to go to sleep. This is an amazing product, and we are giving you a discount for following along with This Tantric Life. So you can use the discount code This Tantric Life 15. It'll give you 15% off your first purchase over at shopmood.com. So if you want to check out these products, get yourself some sensual activation, head on over to shopmood.com. And my favorite way to do ecstatic dance and yoga is actually to combine sensuality and sex magic, our other incredible product over at Mood, together. And it gives you this very like floaty, dreamy, transcendental state.
And I want to share, like, this trip, you know, we are here, I would say, bravely sharing these.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I feel nervous.
Yeah. Lesbian sexual experiences, you know, which it is brave to share that with the world, even as privileged as we are. And in that, it was an edge for me to connect as intimately and as deeply and as wildly as I did with you. And one of the things that's been so important to me is to shift some of the narrative that spirituality is something that you do always alone, right? Yes, we say we come into this world alone, but do we really? We come in through mama, you know?
Yeah.
And we come into someone's arms, and we say we die alone, but we should die surrounded by people who love us. So do we really come in and go alone?
Yeah.
And there's this idea, like, yes, there are some things that you have to face solo, right? Sitting in a meditation retreat by yourself at some point in your life, I hope we all do that, right? Being in the dark on plant medicine in an all-night jungle ceremony, like there's some shit that you handle on your own. No one can save your ass. You go in there and you do it. And I'm a big believer that our spirituality should be shared, is meant to be shared is maybe a better way to put it. And that spirituality can be an exchanged experience. And I know because of my complex PTSD from growing up in sexual abuse, how hard and disconnected my heart has been sometimes, that I have been alienated from myself. I've done a lifetime of work to be able to make love like that. And I was proud of myself to open that deeply with you, to connect that energetically, to be that raw and that open. And I've been having tantric sex for like, I think 15, 17 years. But there's still so many layers of intimacy. It's like you can have a bunch of energy awakenings and never be touched by the person in front of you. You can have all kinds of Kundalini awakenings and never open your heart all the way. And the level of intimacy and magic and love and connection and God that I felt with you in the cave was so special. Like lifetime of specialness. And I only want to say that because it's true, but I want anyone watching this to not mistake us sharing this for like showing off, but to actually show the world like that this is possible and beautiful and sacred, and that anyone can do it with work and dedication and practice and the beauty of mystical spiritual awakening. Like this is our birthright, to love and make love this way, and to be in nature like this.
Thank you so much for the gift of your friendship and the gift of your love and the gift of your trust in me and opening your heart in that way. And something I also want to just name is that this is like our 3-year anniversary of being friends. And so like all of the tears and all of the portals and all of the ceremonies and all of the teachings that we've given each other, like there's so much history here in the depth of our friendship. And now it feels like this beautiful, like new chapter. And one thing I think that feels important to name and note is that because our society is so homophobic and because there is so much shame around it, that I think so many people, like especially women, like because most people are sexualized, because women are so sexualized in our culture, like there is like an attraction to the feminine form, like almost like, I mean, I don't know the science, you probably do, but it feels like more humans are attracted to the female form than the male form. That's maybe
like
just
more women are bisexual than men.
Thank you. That's probably thank you. More women are bisexual than men. And who even knows if that's true or if that's just conditioning. But something that feels of note is the simultaneity of like the depth and realness of our friendship and the depth and realness of this connection. And it feels like our friendship has been jeopardized in 0%. And so I just want to highlight that because it might be possible that someone has a really great friend that they are attracted to and they're concerned that it would jeopardize their friendship. And I just know so many women who have lovers that they're friends with and it has not jeopardized their friendship at all. And so that seems special and unique, and I don't know anyone talking about that or writing about that or studying that.
There's not even a word for it. Because people are like lover, but we're not lovers. We're like the predominant nature of our bond is like friendship, but that's like feels like such a small word for what it is. It's like soul allyship, right? And there's an erotic component of it. But I think part of patriarchy is that eroticism has to dominate. So if you have eros, then you must be lovers or you must be girlfriends.
Or that you belong to someone.
Versus like eros being a natural expression of a much bigger way of relating, and that there is this way of being together that's so special. And it was something that's coming to me right now that I hadn't really thought of before is like what I love about talking about this lovemaking in the cave, right? This advanced, like being able to take psychedelics and have to. I actually want everyone to take psychedelics in a held way with a skilled guide or in a sacred sanctuary where they are protected, where there aren't tourists stumbling in and taking photos. But we had to do that because our society doesn't protect high priestess practices and sacred sites anymore for ritual use.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I thought that in the cave, actually, like we are subjecting ourselves to something that isn't fully safe for our nervous systems because we have to, and I wish we didn't, right? I wish there were sacred sites and sacred nature sanctuaries to be able to go and safely take plant medicine, even if you are on your own, that were deeply protected, right? I hope people someday stumble across naked witches doing witchcraft in the forest again, you know? God bless it. But when we think of doing the work, right? Doing the therapy, doing the coaching, doing the meditation, doing the sacred sexuality, doing the Vita practices, doing the Ziva meditation, sometimes we think of, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing. But what I want this episode to stand for is you get to live an extraordinary, audacious life where you can have this kind of relationship, where you can do outrageous things in a primordial cave, where you can have Kundalini lovemaking, because this is available to everyone, and we have to do the work to be able to get there, right? You said 40 years of collective spiritual work between us. And I really reflected on this trip how that created a level of safety for us to be able to do plant medicine together, to do spiritual practice together, to make love like that in nature, and what a gift that is. And so when we do the practices, we're not just doing them to heal, although that is a very important component of it. We're actually doing it so we can live these extraordinary lives. And that is absolutely available to everyone. And something I reflected on a lot on this trip is I got to unlock some of my deep magic with you because you could meet me. And one of the key reasons that you can meet me is because of meditation, is because of that 16 years of meditation practice. It's so necessary to have that foundation inside of yourself so that you can like I just see like this oak tree like growing so big and bright and audacious like you are because of your roots. And when you taught me Ziva meditation, I started falling in love with meditation. I started doing meditation every day for the first time in my life, which I had always wanted to do. Before I could meditate, if I was like on a meditation retreat, if I was in like a spiritual community, but I started like doing it every day, sometimes twice a day. So meditation feels like a sanctuary for me now. And in you, I feel it. I feel your practice. I feel your devotion to your own technique, your own methodology. And I feel how that has allowed us to have this intimacy, this eros, this potent lovemaking, this relationship to energy, this audacity. So I just love for you to share a little bit more about that meditation practice. And I just want everyone to know how highly I recommend you, how much I want everyone to study and work with you because of how powerful it is.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that and naming that. And it's so funny because now thinking back of even, 12, 13 years ago when I started teaching, people would come to me and they'd be like, Emily, like, this is wild. Like, what's happening in my sex is wild. It's raw. It's animalistic. Like, people who, like, would start meditating and their sex lives would change.
Yeah.
So I actually started talking about it because, it turns out sex sells. Like, I wrote one of my first articles that ever went viral back on Mind Body Green back in the day was 5 ways meditation can help you have mind-blowing sex. Yeah. And I think that we think of, meditation, I'm transcending my body. I'm going to God. It's holy. We think about it as sacred, which is not in the body because of our conditioning. And I found it to be the opposite. Yeah. That actually the whole point of Ziva is to give your body deep healing rest. And when you do that, you're getting rid of the stress, not only from today, but all of the backlog of stress that's been stored in our nervous systems. And when you do that, similar to like the shaking that would happen in Kundalini, you are throwing off the stress that is keeping you from embodying the bliss that is your birthright.
Yeah.
And so day after day, meditation after meditation, this little wave of individuality is reminding itself that it's actually the ocean of totality. And so you do that enough times, and you no longer are under the illusion that you're just this tiny little wave. Like, you are really swimming in the and-ness of that. Yeah. Yes, I am Emily Fletcher, and I am also goddess.
Yeah.
Both in equal parts. And that doesn't make me special, because if I am, then so are you.
Yeah.
And when you start to see the divinity in yourself, you cannot help but see the divinity in everyone else. That's going to change you as a parent, that's going to change you as a partner, and it is certainly going to change you as a lover. Also, I think that to me, these sacred sexuality practices are like endogenous psychedelics. It's like you are activating psychedelic states with your own internal pharmacology. And so just like you would want to do meditation to prepare for and integrate a plant medicine ceremony, I also think it's important to do meditation to set your intention and to integrate sacred sexuality practices. Like, I don't think it's a cosmic accident that nature was like, hey, ding-dongs, like, meet up, like, join forces, because these practices are so outrageously complementary.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes from myself is, always good to end a 4-part podcast series with a touch of narcissism, is that sex is the active form of meditation, and meditation is the still form of sex.
Ugh.
So I also love, like, not only do we make love as the yin and yang of the infinite universe, but we actually teach the yin and yang of awakening, which is so powerful.
Yes.
And so sacred. So we did it.
I mean, 4 parts, Layla.
4 parts and like 10 days here in Greece.
Yeah.
So many adventures, such a deep journey. And we didn't plan, like, we didn't know. We had like a loose plan of where we were going to go. We had a real loose plan of the medicines. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, we're going to like descend into the primordial cave and like have cosmic fucking that like brings us back to the ancient rawness of our human selves and our divine selves, And I think something that I want to say about that is sometimes we think spirituality is about doing the practice perfect. Spirituality is actually showing up for the practice so that you can enter the state of divine impulse, a surrendered ritual of freedom. And that's what we have been entering into. And that's what I want to invite everyone to understand, is there is this way of being so with the energy and so connected that you're not thinking like, what do I do anymore?
It's not technique.
The energy takes you.
Yeah.
And to me, that is actually one of the goals of spiritual practice. But in a lot of traditions, we're actually afraid of that level of freedom. So we forget and make spirituality about the outcome of the practice. Like, there's some goal of the practice versus the liberation into the dying of the ego self and the mind, into the impulse of the universe speaking through you in your movements and in your expression.
Yes, divine impulse in sacred sexuality, when you're making dinner, walking down the street, like being an instrument for nature to use you to deliver fulfillment. That's what these practices get you, not the ability to do any of the practices well. Who cares? No one cares if you're a good meditator. No one cares if you're a good tantrika. People care if you're good at life. People care if you're a good lover. People care if you're a good partner. And these practices, the whole point, like you said, it's to enjoy life, to be available for the divine impulse, which is, she's always using us.
Yeah. And I just also want to finish this by honoring both of us have amazing partners.
Yes.
Both of us have amazing male partners who have blessed our union, this trip, the magic between us.
Yes.
And how sacred and special that is to be so honored and so seen by the kings that stand at our sides.
Yes, thank you for naming that. And I just truly like deep reverence, and something that's been coming up inside of the relationship is this simultaneity, feeling so claimed and so free.
Yeah.
And that actually the more free I feel, the more I want to fall deeper and deeper into his arms. And just honoring Adam as the king that he is, for having the confidence, for having the trust, and for being in such divine reverence to the goddess and seeing the goddess flowing through us and wanting to serve that. I feel really grateful.
Yeah.
Good job.
And how much we stand for each other's partnerships and relationships.
Yeah.
How much we're there for each other in such a beautiful, beautiful way to have the most incredible relationships. All right, so the sun is going down.
Yep,
Literally,
it's literally getting dark.
Super dark. So we're
If you're
gonna
watching on YouTube, good job, thank you.
clips on Instagram. They're gonna be like, "Yo, why'd they film in a dark podcast studio? Because it's just our hotel room and we just hanging out, yo." So, still coughing.
Queasy's coming back.
So check out all 4 parts of this podcast series. So episode 1 and 3 on Emily Fletcher's podcast, Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? Episode 2 and 4 here on This Tantric Life with Layla Martin. Please follow us and like us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Rating our podcast is so helpful. Follow us on Instagram, tagging us and, video. What do you do? Screenshot this. Tag us on Instagram at Ziva Meditation, at the Layla Martin. You can follow me at laylamartin.com. You can follow Emily at
zivameditation.com.
Yeah. And just know the thing I want to leave you with is like, this is such a process to live this way, to integrate this way, to be spiritual like this, to fuck like this. It's a process, it's a path, it's a methodology. We aren't the only teachers, but we teach really in-depth systems that are beautiful and magical. So if you're watching this and you're like, how? That is the work that we do. That is the actual work we do as teachers, is to give you the depth of initiation, the depth of the methodology to be able to have this for yourself. So if you are hungry for that, consider working with both or either of us in a deeper, more powerful, more structured way in our programs. I will see you for our next episode. I am sending you so much love, so much magic, so much eros, so much delight, and so much truth.
Thank you for listening to This Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at the Layla Martin. And thank you so much for being here.